right, welcome back to another episode of Unlocking Growth. I am so excited about my guest today because it actually comes from my personal business. Kyle Harrison was actually one of the first professional coaches I had in my real estate business. He was huge in terms of changing my mindset around the way I look at business and personal life. And he's not just a coach. He also is the owner of multiple companies over the years. One in particular that I know he's going to want to highlight, I'll let him talk about, is that he does your bookkeeping partner. He does bookkeeping services for specifically real estate. And so he is a wealth of knowledge. I know we're going to have a great conversation today. So I'll just jump right into it. Kyle, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, Brian. Good to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and speak to your guests that's going to be listening. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always start with, building a little bit of credibility because, we've known each other for years, but anybody listening, this is the first time they've heard you. So I'm excited about the conversation, but tell us a little bit more about your background, what you do, and why everybody else should be excited to hear you.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, my name is Kyle Harrison. I am a KW Keller Williams MAPS executive coach. So there's mastery coaches, there's executive coaches. So I had just a little over 8,000 one-to-one business coaching calls. So, to have that honor to be able to coach some of the highest performers in real estate and some of the highest performing CEOs in the company and really outside of the company, it's truly an honor to do that. And then, as you mentioned, Brian, through my coaching, I realized that a lot of agents and businesses do not have good profit and losses. They just don't understand their business from a financial standpoint. And if you Google the top 5 reasons why businesses fail, 3 of them are attached to financials. So we launched a bookkeeping company about 3 years ago named Your Bookkeeping Partner. And so we're growing very, very fast. We're in the real estate space, and that's our one niche. That's our one thing is real estate. So every single person in our company understands the P&L. They could actually coach agents and business owners on the P&L because we value training so much. And then that's the residential side. And we do a launch bookkeeping, which is the commercial side of things. So it's a little bit different. Commercial is more low transactions, high volume, a lot of moving parts. That's why we really separated the two, for an internal company and really to serve the clients as well. And then I'm an investor, real estate, mostly multifamily all over the country. With my partners and we own just a little over 380 doors. So that keeps me busy as well. So yeah, that's who I am, what I am, and I'm passionate about serving others and pouring into other people. And I know you are too, Brian. So when you called me and said, "Hey, will you do this?" I said, "Absolutely." So.
Well, and I'm excited to see, all the growth you've had over the past few years, just in the time we've known each other. And I don't know any successful business coach that doesn't, through that practice, identify gaps in the business world for their clients, right? And so you said that perfectly. You saw the need because, and this is not a real estate podcast, but I will tell you that there is not equal weight in the P&L in the real estate space in terms of training, the way that brokers train salespeople, the way that team owners train their agents that work for them. There's just not any focus on it,
Well, there's, everything's about models. And if you don't follow a model, you will work harder and make less, and whether it's the real estate space or, you're selling widgets, t-shirts, it really doesn't matter. There's models that you follow. And so that's, with coaching and bookkeeping and, all that, we follow models and we study what works and, we read on what works, what doesn't work. And then we just pick a model and go for it. And you're able to scale a lot faster when everybody has a model to work from and everybody's rowing the boat in the same direction.
I was going through my business planning this past couple of months, right? It's that time of year with my team. And sure. Speaking of models, right? So we have a model for that. And one thing that I introduced this year that I honestly have neglected in the past is with their income goals, with their expenses, I also factored in their tax bracket. I factored in the amount that they would have for that. So,
Sure.
and I saw the light bulbs go off, because it's like, I don't just have to earn every dollar that I spend. I have to earn more than every dollar I spend to pay for, the tax, basically the tax debt that's going to come up, or the tax liability that's going to come up. And I don't think that oftentimes people think about that.
Right. Well, they don't. And, I'd say on the goal that I see a lot of times just with clients and really honestly myself, and, we're all learning based and always looking to get better, is, you can set goals. However, people don't slow enough down to really put an importance to that goal, and at least in the real estate world, people are like, oh, I'll do X number of transactions, or I'll make X number of dollars or whatever. But until, Brian, they put a meaning to that money, or they put a meaning to that goal or their purpose, it just becomes a number. And so really figuring out what the goal is and putting a meaning to that goal that will allow you to run through a brick wall to get it, that becomes powerful. And I think a lot of people miss that. And, a number's a number, and they're like, oh, I'll hit it. And then they never hit it because they really don't care to hit it, or they're not committed to hit it. And so, yeah, you're right. When you're business planning and laying that out, is what is that goal? What does that number actually mean to you? Who else does it impact? And if you're not doing the work to do that, it's just, almost kind of wasting your time.
Well, and if you don't understand the cost too, right? I mean,
right. Exactly.
and I know that I know this from our conversations. I mean, one of the things that you were really good at when you and I were in business together, right? When you were coaching me when I was early in my real estate career, you could.
I was early in my coaching career too, but Brian, that's why you didn't fire me. I was terrible.
No, I'm pretty sure that that was. And I've mentioned this before. I didn't fire you, but you were probably the most instrumental, because I was new to coaching, and so I probably wasn't the most coachable. Right. Early on. But I remember you really tying that number to a personal need. I would have weeks where my numbers would look good, and you could hear it in my tone of voice that I hadn't spent the right amount of time with my son. And you would call me out on it, right? Yeah. That made a huge impact on me, because it really connected. Okay, if the cost of the activities is not in line with what you want for your life, then it's not a cost that you're going to pay, or at least not for very long.
Yeah. I'd like to, can I share a story about that?
Absolutely.
And I think part of it's really my mindset to coaching and just really to life. I want to say, Brian, it was probably like 2015, 2014. My daughter was, I think, about 6 years old, and, I worked really hard, made a lot of money, and, big house, cars, the clubs, all that stuff. And I went in to tuck her in one night, and she said, Dad, I just don't feel like I know you. And, I got to tell you, it still chills. I mean, to talk about this, and it's pretty upsetting. And I walked out of her room and said, life is going to change today. And it did. And it led me down the path of coaching. It led me down the path of other things that I'm doing right now, because I put, if it does not line up with my purpose and line up with things that are important to me in life, am I going to be proud of myself, on that last breath? And, that's just kind of how I live my life and how I coach to that. I had a client, hire me as a coach yesterday, and I said, making lots of money, doing great things. And I said, here's the thing. If you're not willing to slow down and get purposeful about not working as hard or not working as much and spending more time with your family, I'm not the right coach. I'll just be honest with you, because if you're not willing to slow down and do the things like you said, to spend more time with your son, and you're not willing to do that, I'm not the right fit, because it's about a work-life balance, right? It's why we do what we do is for the people that we serve and for our families. And I see a lot of people in the business world, they just get so caught up, including myself. And if I did not have that life change, and my daughter did not say, Dad, I don't feel like I know you, I don't know where I'd be today. So it was a blessing that, I had that, and I'm able to carry that into my coaching and how to impact lives. And that's my North Star, man. It really is.
Well, and I'm sure you have an immense amount of gratitude, even though that at the time I'm sure was painful. But looking back, I mean, how awesome is it that she had the courage to say that, because that changed you, right?
Changed everything.
Yeah.
That's
It's
why
amazing how one conversation, one comment.
conversation. Yeah. Yeah. And, I didn't have a ton of, stuff growing up, and I worked hard and I worked at a young age. And so, my mind was providing for my family was me contributing, and it was. However, you spell love, Time, or time is spelled Love, however you want to look at it. And, everybody has the same amount of time. It's what you do with that time that matters. And are you slowing enough down, getting out of the hamster wheel and really reflecting on what's important to you? Most people, Brian, just don't do it. That's where a lot of my coaching is and growth is to help people realize that and put that mirror in front of them and say, what do you want to say at your funeral? I've had some clients write their eulogy, just to put an impact of like, why are we doing this? These are highly successful people, and they're still racing. I'm not saying you can't race. It's just, how much time are you spending with the things that really matter?
I heard the other day that 80% of the time that you spend with your children happens before they're the age of 18.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And
I think it's even higher than that, like before the age of 10 or so. I mean, it's crazy. There's a statistic out there.
My son is now, believe it or not, he'll be 15 next month. So I can tell you in terms of quality time, or at least the attitude that a child has for quality time, there's a diminishing return when you hit a certain point. Exactly. I'm hoping that comes around when he gets maybe, 20. Maybe we'll get along again. Not that, obviously we have a great relationship, but it is different, when they're little. It's everything is fun. Everything is a blast. I wish that I could look in the mirror and see myself the same way that my son looked at me, when he was like, 8, 9, 10, right? Because I could do no wrong. There was no bigger superhero than his dad. And, it's, we have an obligation to try and make sure that we prove right on the way that they view us, right?
Well, we have a 1 in 4 trillion chance of being born.
Right.
Everybody has a dash. How are you living your dash?
Man, now that gave me chills, Kyle. That's good. Well, and I want to talk a little bit about work-life balance. You'd mentioned that, right? And so I've often described it as counterbalance, because I think balance sometimes will give the wrong impression. It means, hey, 50% here, 50% there, right? And this is, of course, a real estate joke, but I always joke about is you're building home equity. Right. So if I want to build equity in my home and my family, then I have to invest in them. I have to spend the amount of time. And then I have earned the right to pull against that if I need to, if I have to step into a provider role, if we have to, invest in the future or spend more time on an investment property, right, which I know that you can relate to, because the return is going to come back, then I'm okay to do that. But you can't borrow against a negative equity position, right? If you don't have your family in that position, then you're going to be setting yourself up for failure. And I don't know about you, but I really don't want my family to foreclose upon me. That would be pretty rough.
Yeah. That's one of the books, the 5 Regrets of the Dying, or I think it's 5 Regrets of the Dying. I think it's the book. That puts things in perspective. It really does. It's if you're one of the things that I see a lot, Brian, is just, I mentioned a couple times, just not slowing down. Mm-hmm. There's 4 things, and there's really 4 things. It's execute, reflect, adjust, repeat. Right? Execute, reflect, adjust, repeat. And most people are really good at executing and adjusting, and they just keep repeating that cycle. That's called the hamster wheel. I don't know about you, but I've been on it many times. Where they're lacking is the actual slowing down to reflect. And when they reflect, they actually retain more information and learn more in the reflection period than they do in the execution and adjusting. Keith Cunningham says it the best in The Road Less Stupid. He says, are you running enthusiastically in the wrong direction? And most people are, or they don't even know what direction that they're running. They're just running. Well, if you don't have a finish line, you're always going to keep running. So again, are you slowing enough down to reflect on what's working, what's not, who am I showing up with, how am I, all these questions. And if you have not read The Road Less Stupid, it's probably the best business book I've read. And it just talks about that CEO time slowing down, or the financial book, Think and Grow Rich. It doesn't say do and grow rich. It says think and grow rich, right? So a lot of people, they think they're thinking, they think they're slowing down. They're not at all. And that's, for me personally, that's when life changed. Aside from, my daughter, I have so much time with myself in the mornings. It's been so impactful of who I am, where I am, what I'm doing. Anybody listening on this podcast today, spend time with yourself. It doesn't have to be a ton of time, just 15 to 20 minutes a day starting. No phones, no emails, no nothing. Just sit in silence or journal or just work on your mind. And that's where the biggest impact comes in my world, Brian. And I think people they just keep going, and you probably heard it too, is, I'm burned out, or there's not enough time, or I'm not having fun, or, whatever. Man, what kind of life is that? Not having fun of what you're doing.
I think we do a bad job as especially the culture of the U.S., but really, society as a whole kind of pushes run, hustle. You know what I mean? I used to introduce myself as the anti-hustle realtor, because I just, it's not that I'm not willing to run. It's just that I'm not going to run without having a direction, right? You said that. Yeah. You said that perfectly, and I don't think we take time to celebrate thought. I'm right there with you. Ryan Holiday, I love following, listening to him. He talks a lot about Stoic philosophy, which is kind of rooted in self-reflection. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's my morning time is, I have my time to myself, no devices. And then I have my mindset time block where I'll either, read from the Daily Stoic or read, something that's thoughtful in nature, and just reflect and write my own notes on it. And days I miss doing that, I'm off.
Totally. Well, a lot of people are in the pursuit of more, more this, more that. At the end of the day, are you in the pursuit of better? I had a coach ask me 2 weeks ago. He goes, "Are you doing less better?" And clarity is a lack. Clarity is a process of elimination, not process of addition. And I think that's where we want to keep. If we're not clear, we want to keep adding, or we want to go down another rabbit hole or whatever. It's really it's process of just getting things out of your brain, out of your life, creating white space in your calendar. And people want to they're chasing the abundance of more when they really just need to be chasing better. Especially in the real estate world, what's better, right? Communicating to your client, do it better, right? Working at your schedule, do it better, not like more and keep adding. It's just, I see it a lot, and it's just more. Well, no, it's just, what do you need to do less of better? And I think that's, what you said, Brian, is just really reflecting and having a finish line. So yeah, I see that a lot. And then they wake up and they're 90 years old and they're like, man, what did I really accomplish? Who did I impact?
Well, I've seen people run themselves out of business by chasing more, right? Now, I don't have as much coaching experience as you. Most of mine is focused on brand new agents, right? And, working with them, starting and launching their business. And one of the common things I would see is that they would chase what they thought was just this great relationship or this great investor that was going to buy 50 homes in the first year, or they would have these one or two clients that was going to make their year, and they would run and never actually see that return on investment, or they would take anybody without stopping to think, is this a good fit for me? should I be saying no to this business? Because if they're not congruent with the value that I provide, it's going to cost, it's going to cost me more time. Like, I haven't fired many clients because, and when I did, it was early in my business, because I've gotten better at only taking the ones that were really congruent with me being able to provide the value that they needed from me. You don't have to take every piece of business that walks through the door.
No. Going back to the simplicity, people tend to, anybody who's listening, you want to write this down. This is a good one. People overcomplicate things to justify their own inactions.
Ooh. All right. Repeat that one more time, Kyle, because I know that the people are writing.
People overcomplicate things to justify their own inactions. Right? If your business plan, a sixth grader can't read it and understand it, it's too complicated. People want to chase the shiny object on the wall. Well, in my world, there's not many things that 20 real estate conversations a day can't solve. Right? That's simple. Right? If you want to go get more business, go knock 100 doors. Well, the math is 10 to 15% will actually open it, and you have 1 to 3% that will actually list their property. People just they think simplicity. That's simple. If you want 1 to 3 listings today, go knock 100 doors, because the math shows that you can get 1 to 3 listings a day if you just go knock 100 doors. But people don't want to hear that, Brian. They don't want to hear, they're like, well, that's just too simple. It's got to be harder than that. No, it's not. I mean, I'm going to give you an example. I'm not going to use any names on here. 22-year-old agent, right? First year in the business. And all he does is one thing only. And that is the golden letter. He sends out a golden letter to his area. He's mastered the objections. That's all he focuses on. Well, in October, he just passed over netting $1 million in real estate. Netting. Because he just came to be the best at one thing.
22.
And, what's that?
And he's 22?
And he's 22 years old. First year in the real estate business. He's
That's
looking
amazing.
around like, this is easy. Well, yeah, it's easy because you did one thing. You mastered one thing. And if you haven't read the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, it really just is that. And I think through my career, Brian, the epiphany is I have overcomplicated things. And I would say the last 3 years, it has been super simple. If it's not a heck yes, it's a hell no. And it's super simple. And if it's complicated, I'm not doing it, because it's just the mind space, the energy. And, people tend to overcomplicate things to justify their own inactions. And anybody who's listening to this, just stop complicating things. Pick your one thing. I had my team right before Thanksgiving. I always send out mindset stuff to my entire companies. And one of the things I got from The One Thing was, if we were to double our business in the next 6 months, what's the one thing that we can do such by doing it and make everything else easier and necessary? Well, my team sat on that for through the holiday, and we came back and we had a leadership team meeting, and we came up with teaching. Well, guess what? Gary wrote the MREA book. Well, that story was, he did the same thing. Got everybody in the room. They threw everything on a whiteboard. And what came out of that room was to write The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. One thing. He wrote a book, and Keller Williams, the largest company in the world. What? How could that possibly be? And so, I think going back to whoever's listening, going back to internal, look yourself in the mirror and say, where am I overcomplicating things? And if there was one thing that I did, and such by doing that, make everything else easier and necessary. That's in business, that's in health, that's in spiritual, that's in whatever hurts you want to get better in life. That's simple, right? Just staying that course, So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there when you're talking about just keeping it simple.
Well, I mean, I think you nailed it. I appreciate you bringing that up. I mean, I'm on read through number 4, I think, of The One Thing, because it is really it's that impactful. And it's silly that I have to read a book page to page multiple times just to get that concept into my head to just do the one thing really well. Right. Because, and that tells you a lot about, human nature, is that we tend to, as you said, we tend to overcomplicate things.
That's exactly right.
Because, it can't be that easy, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. It can't be that easy. Well, if you just stay the course on that one thing and you have faith, a lot of it's faith. But the problem is people get attached to the outcome too much. If I pick up the phone and make a phone call or sales call, I should get a piece of business. We're in a now society, right? With Amazon, you order the night before and the package shows up at 4 a.m. the next morning. So it's really delayed satisfaction. And, just making sure that what you do today will show up 60, 90, 120 days. And the problem that I see with a lot of folks is they do it, right? Let's just use real estate because that's the space that I'm in and you're into. Is they lead gen, they do all the great things, they're keeping it simple, and then all this business comes, right? And then they're servicing the business and they stop doing what they're doing. And that's where the peaks and the valleys of any business. You can't stop doing what you're doing that got you there, even though the business is coming. That's called leverage. That's called growing a company. If you're doing that, they get caught in that trap. I know I have. I've gotten caught in that trap. And when the plane is, shaking because you got so much business, that's a great thing. And just keep going,
Yeah.
And people stop and they're like, well, I don't have any business. Well, it's going to take you 60 to 90 days to get back where you were. It's just this constant energy, to start, stop. It takes a lot of energy to do that. No. You don't.
Well, I can give you a plug too. As far as leverage, like one of those things as a business owner is the P&L, is running the books, is, and what I see even some successful business owners, in particular the real estate space too, is they'll throw more production at that and they'll not do it because it's not their one thing, and they'll neglect it, and it'll end up, they'll end up having to outsell what they need to throw more, more money at the problem, because profit will hide all manner of sins. Right.
Yeah.
And,
well said. Yeah.
and the end result is that they're working harder than what they need to. They're more susceptible to burnout. They're not having the balance. And if they were willing to hire, I don't know, say a bookkeeping service that was reputable and knew the real estate space, right? then they'd have leverage. Right. And so,
Right.
there's a reason why you saw that as a common gap, I'm sure, because I've seen it. I've experienced it personally.
Yeah, a lot of business owners just don't see that, the financials are the way. I was looking at a P&L with someone the other day, and they're really profitable, like 60, 70% profitable. And they're super proud of it. And I said, gosh, I'm so proud of it, of what it spends. And they sat that, like, I don't see my family very often. So is it worth being 60% profitable and not seeing your family? Or hiring somebody, lower the profitability and spending more time with the family. Right? So it's a choice. It's a decision, to make, and that's what financials do. So you can make great business decisions, right? And 98% of realtors don't do it.
No.
We have a small business division that just handles the small businesses outside real estate, and so most people don't know their financials. It's like flying a plane with no instruments. Good luck.
Yeah. And the weather's bad, And
the weather's bad, and you don't know where you're going. And if you don't know where you're going, how do you know when you get there?
Well, I was happy with a 42% profit. But again, you said it well, like it's to kind of make it full circle. It's not the number, it's what it means for you, right? So
that's right.
That number for me might be the right balance to allow me to have the amount of time that I need to spend time with myself, spend time with my family, spend time with people I care about. So
one thing I want to, I keep looking at your thing here. It says unlocking growth. I keep looking at it. Gosh, unlocking growth. I love that. The name of the podcast that you're doing here. And having the ability to coach a lot of companies, and I want everyone to write this down. This is another nugget, because this is how I coach to it. This is what I work with. This is who I am. And what I want you to write down is when values, standards, and expectations are clear, decisions are easy. And when I coach businesses, or coach clients, I'm like, what's your values? Like, I don't know. How do you know when to make a decision or when to say yes or no? You don't know what your values are. So there's personal values and there's business values. Well, then what's the standards? And standards and expectations can be a little bit of a gray area. And I break them down this way. Standards are what you would fire someone over, and expectations are just set stuff that you might write someone up on. So standards would be, you've got to sell 24 houses a year. If you're not on this team to do 24 deals, you're not on the team. Right? That's a standard. Or, hey, you need to dress professional. That's an expectation. Or you need to, we talk to our client. Clients always come first. Expectation. Right? So standard is something that you fire someone over. It goes back to the reflection. That's why they execute, reflect, adjust, repeat, right? It goes back to the reflection. Are you super clear on what you stand for? And if that's your hiring, that's your clients that you're bringing into your world, Brian, where you can take them on and fire them. If they do not line up with who you are, the standards that you set for yourself and your company, and the values that you are, then who are you? And Gary Keller, a multi-billionaire, when you don't have your values, who are you? And a lot of people don't slow down, or they're like, oh, it's integrity, or oh, it's loyalty, or no, what does that actually mean? And I was on a call with Jay Papasan the other day. He wrote the one thing, and he said his values are impact, family, and abundance. Anything that comes and hits my plate has to be a 9 or a 10 on the impact, family, or abundance. If it's not, it's probably no. That's living values. That's the one thing, right?
Well, and that's not just for business owners either.
It's not.
If you're within somebody else's business, you should also be thinking of that. I still remember when you and I went through that exercise, and it helped me highlight, the person I'm in business with, the values of the business are not in alignment with my personal business values or my personal values. And that sparked that change, right?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, thank you for that. I don't know if I'm sure I thanked you at the time, but it was a huge launching point for me to go out on my own and start something that I owned the vision and the values of. But that's huge. I mean, it's for everybody. It's for everybody. You have to be congruent.
Yeah. There's exercises out there if you're wanting to get better at that. The core value is one thing. Deck stack is you can see it online. Just work through that, figure that out. And a lot of times, sometimes those values just change throughout the years. And it just, are you in tune with that? And does your values need to change up a little bit based on where you are in life? And every year, every quarter, every day, every week is a different chapter, right? So your chapters change because your values change. Even Jay said, it wasn't impact, family, abundance. It was family, impact, and abundance. He said, well, now my kid's pretty much out of school, out of the house. So now that impact came in front of family because they're not around, right? So it was just an interesting perspective, on what he says yes and no to and how he aligns that up. And Brian, if people don't have their North Star and wake up and figure out what they're doing and why they're doing it, who's it impacting, that's the first place to start.
Well, I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to have another conversation with you, Kyle. So grateful that you took the time to share your story about your North Star, about your business, your own personal approach to unlocking growth. And I know we could talk all day long, but at some point, you've got other clients to talk to and people to help with their businesses. So, if somebody's listening and they really found value in the conversation, which I'm sure they did, I already wrote a bunch of stuff down. How can they get a hold of you? Where should they follow you? What's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, I'm pretty much be found online. Kyle Harris through LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever. They can always call me. They can always email me. My email's out there, so it's coachkyle.maps@gmail.com. They can always find me there. You can find me at yourbookkeepingpartner.com. I'm on there as well. So anybody who has interest or just questions or hire me as a coach or hire me as a bookkeeping company or hire a company, I should say, we'd be honored to be able to help those folks.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast, to join the show. You were the first person that came to mind because you were so impactful as a coach for my business when it came to how to unlock growth for others. So really appreciate the time and the conversation.
It's interesting. You impact my life just as much. So thank you. I really appreciate it as well.
That means a lot. Well, thank you guys for listening. If you enjoyed this and you want to find more tips and more one-to-one conversations about how to unlock growth, make sure that you subscribe, follow on all the places where great podcasts are put out there. Thanks, guys. See you next time.